The pen trembled in his hand. 50 pages. Marble table. Manhattan penthouse so high above the city, you could barely hear the traffic below. My daughter deserves better than this. Lila's mother didn't whisper it, didn't soften it, just said it, right to Ethan's face, like he wasn't even human. Ethan Marlow looked down at the prenup. 50 pages that spelled it out in legal terms. You're not good enough. You'll never be good enough. No rights to the home. No say in future children. If this marriage ends, you leave with nothing. He was a chemistry teacher, made $42,000 a year, raised his 7-year-old son in a 2-bedroom apartment where the heat barely worked. And he was in love. So when they slid that pen across the table, he signed every single page. What Lila didn't know, what her mother didn't know, what no one in that penthouse knew, was that Ethan Marlow had a secret, a $20 million secret, locked away, waiting, just 6 months away from his 36th birthday. They thought they were protecting their fortune. They had no idea they were about to lose something far more valuable. Because the man they treated like nothing, he was about to become everything. Before we continue, we'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. And if you love stories about dignity, patience, and the quiet power of knowing your worth, hit that like button. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. Because this story, it's one you'll want to share with everyone who's ever been underestimated. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You see, this story doesn't start with revenge. It starts with a man who was just trying to survive. A single dad. A widower. Someone who'd already been broken once and put himself back together for his son's sake. And when Lila walked into his life, when she made him believe in second chances, that's when everything he'd rebuilt became vulnerable again. So to understand why Ethan signed that prenup, why he'd let them treat him like he was nothing, you need to know who he was before all this. You need to see what it took for him to open his heart one more time. Let me take you back. Ethan Marlow never expected to fall in love again. Not after Sarah died. Not after 3 years of being the only parent in the room. At birthday parties where other kids arrived with both mom and dad. At school plays where he clapped alone in the 3rd row. At bedtime when his son asked questions he didn't have answers for. Dad, why can't mom just come back for one day? How do you explain forever to a 7-year-old? So Ethan stopped thinking about love. Stopped imagining it. His life became a rhythm. Wake up, make breakfast, teach chemistry to teenagers who'd rather be anywhere else. Pick up Ethan Jr., help with homework. Read stories about knights and dragons until his son's breathing went soft. It was enough. It had to be enough. Love, that was for people whose hearts were still intact. But then came Lila. He almost swiped left. Her profile picture, elegant dress, champagne glass, backdrop of some charity gala, screamed different world. The kind of woman who probably had a driver, who summered in the Hamptons, who wouldn't know what it felt like to check your bank account before buying groceries. But her bio stopped him, looking for someone real, someone who knows the best conversations happen over diner coffee, not champagne. Ethan smiled. Probably just clever marketing. Probably something a friend told her to write. But something, maybe loneliness, maybe hope, maybe just curiosity, made him swipe right. She matched instantly. Their first message exchange lasted 4 hours. She didn't ask what he did for a living right away. Didn't lead with the usual small talk. She asked, "What's something you believe that most people don't?" Ethan stared at his phone. When was the last time someone asked him something like that? He typed, "I believe that mixing 2 ordinary things can create something extraordinary. That's chemistry. That's also people, I guess." Her response came fast. "Like us." His heart did something it hadn't done in 3 years. It hoped. Their first date was at a diner in Queens. Ethan suggested it. Partly because it was all he could afford, partly because he wanted to see if she'd show up. If she meant what she said about coffee over champagne. She arrived in jeans and a sweater, hair pulled back in a ponytail. No design airbag. No makeup shellacked on like armor. Just Lila. And when she laughed, head back, eyes crinkling at the corners, completely unself-conscious. Something in Ethan's chest cracked open. "Tell me about your son," she said, leaning forward like she actually wanted to know. Most women disappeared when they heard, "single dad." The polite ones made excuses after one date. The honest ones just stopped responding. But Lila's whole face lit up. "Ethan Jr.," he said, pulling out his phone. "He's 7. Obsessed with dinosaurs, specifically velociraptors. Terrible at brushing his teeth. Best thing that ever happened to me." She studied the photo, really studied it like she was memorizing his son's face. "He has your eyes," she said softly. "What's his favorite thing about velociraptors?" "He says they're misunderstood. That everyone thinks they're just vicious, but they were actually smart. Social. They hunted in packs, which means they looked out for each other." Lila smiled. "Smart kid. Takes after his dad." They talked until the coffee went cold. Until the waitress refilled their cups twice and started giving them looks. Until Ethan checked his watch and realized the babysitter's meter was running and he should have been home an hour ago. "Can I see you again?" he asked. "I was hoping you'd ask," Lila said. And the way she looked at him, warm, genuine, like he was someone worth seeing again, made him believe that maybe, just maybe, he could have this. The second date, she met Ethan Jr. Ethan's stomach had been in knots all morning. Introducing someone to his son felt monumental. Like opening a door he couldn't close if things went wrong. Like risking the one perfect thing he had left. But the moment Lila walked into his apartment, she crouched down to Ethan Jr.'s eye level. "Hi," she said gently. "I'm Lila. Your dad told me you're the world's leading expert on velociraptors." Ethan Jr., usually shy around strangers, studied her with serious eyes, testing her. "Did you know they were actually really small? Like, turkey-sized?" "I did not know that," Lila said, eyes wide. "That's amazing. What else?" And just like that, his son was off, rattling facts about feathers and pack hunting strategies and how Jurassic Park got everything wrong. Lila listened to every single word, asked follow-up questions, didn't check her phone once. They went to the park, fed ducks stale bread, played on the swings until Ethan Jr. got brave enough to jump off mid-swing and scraped his knee on the landing. Lila pulled a Band-Aid from her purse before Ethan even reached them. A dinosaur Band-Aid. "You came prepared," Ethan said, impressed. "I figured it might come in handy," she replied, smoothing it over Ethan Jr.'s knee. "There. Good as new. Ready to conquer more swings, buddy?" His son nodded, already running back toward the playground. "You're good with him," Ethan said quietly. "He makes it easy," Lila replied, watching Ethan Jr. climb. "He's a great kid, Ethan. You've done something incredible here." Those words settled into his chest like warmth, like validation he didn't know he'd been starving for. For the first time since Sarah died, Ethan let himself imagine a future that wasn't just survival. A future with laughter, with partnership, with someone who saw him, really saw him, and didn't look away. 6 months slipped by like a dream. Lila became part of their rhythm. Sunday morning pancakes where Ethan Jr. insisted on adding chocolate chips to the batter. Movie nights where they'd start with an adventure film and end with Ethan Jr. asleep between them, his head on Lila's shoulder. Homework sessions where she'd admit she was terrible at fractions but tried anyway, making Ethan Jr. giggle when she got the answers wrong. She fit into their small apartment with the cracked bathroom tiles and the radiator that clanked all winter. Into their quiet evenings. Into the life Ethan had built from grief and determination. "Don't you miss your place?" he asked once, watching her curl up on his worn couch with a book and tea. She looked up, genuinely confused. "Why would I? Everything I want is right here." He believed her. God help him, he believed every word. When Lila asked him to move in with her, Ethan's first instinct was to say no. Not because he didn't want to, because her world was so different from his. Her penthouse in Manhattan with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Her family's old money, the kind that came with trust funds and summer homes and casual mentions of the estate in Connecticut. The way she talked about things like charity galas and country clubs like they were normal. I don't know if I fit into that world, he said honestly. Lila took his hands. I'm not asking you to fit into anything. I love you, Ethan. Exactly as you are. You and Ethan Jr., you're my family now. That's all that matters. Family. The word wrapped around his heart and squeezed. Okay, he said. Let's do it. She kissed him, and for that perfect moment, everything felt right. He had no idea what was waiting across that marble table. Had no idea that love, his trust, his belief that kindness and character mattered more than money, was about to be tested in ways he never imagined. But he'd learn. Oh, he'd learn exactly what Lila's family thought he was worth. And they'd learn something too. Something they'd wish they'd known from the very beginning. Because sometimes the people who seem the most genuine are just playing a part. And sometimes the man everyone underestimates is the one holding all the cards. But happiness, Ethan would learn, always comes with a price. And sometimes that price is written in 50 pages of legal terms. The invitation came on embossed cardstock. Dinner at the Ashford residence. 7 p.m. Cocktail attire. Ethan stared at it, feeling the weight of expensive paper between his fingers. The Ashford residence. Not Lila's apartment. Her family's home. It's just dinner, Lila said, kissing his cheek. They want to get to know you better. But Ethan heard what she didn't say. They want to see if you're good enough. He wore his only suit, the one he'd bought for Sarah's funeral and hadn't touched since. Still fit, barely. When he looked in the mirror, he saw a man trying to be something he wasn't. Ethan Jr. stayed with the babysitter. Be good, Ethan told his son. I'll be back before bedtime. Is Lila's family nice? His son asked. Ethan hesitated. I'm sure they are, buddy. He had no idea how wrong he was. The Ashford penthouse wasn't just wealthy. It was a monument to wealth. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, art on the walls that probably cost more than Ethan's annual salary. Maybe more than 5 years' salary. A butler, an actual butler, took his coat. Lila's father, Richard Ashford, shook his hand with the grip of a man measuring him. Literally. Ethan could feel the assessment happening. The clothes, the watch or lack of one worth mentioning. The shoes he'd polished 3 times to hide the scuffs. Chemistry teacher, Richard said. Not a question. A statement, like he'd already done his research. Yes, sir, Ethan replied. Noble profession, Richard said in a tone that made it sound anything but. Lila's mother, Victoria, glided in wearing diamonds that caught the light like tiny stars. She offered her hand not to shake, but to be held. Like royalty. Ethan, she said, smiling without warmth. We've heard so much about you. Nothing she'd heard was good. Ethan could tell. Dinner was served in a dining room that could have seated 20. Just the 4 of them at one end of a table that stretched into shadow. The conversation was careful, polite, a performance. So, Ethan, Victoria said, cutting her filet mignon with surgical precision. Lila tells us you have a son. Yes, Ethan Jr., he's 7. And his mother? The question landed like a slap. She passed away 3 years ago, Ethan said quietly. I'm so sorry, Victoria said in a way that didn't sound sorry at all. That must be difficult. Financially, I mean, raising a child on a teacher's salary. There it was. The first knife. We manage, Ethan said. I'm sure you do. Victoria smiled. Still, it can't be easy. The expenses. Healthcare. Education. Children are so costly these days. Mom, Lila's voice held a warning. I'm simply saying it's admirable, Victoria continued, ignoring her daughter. Making do with less. Not everyone can handle that kind of limitation. Ethan felt Lila's hand find his under the table. Squeeze. Apologizing without words. Richard cleared his throat. Ethan, you seem like a decent man. Hard-working. Sincere. Ethan waited. There was a but coming. He could feel it approaching like a storm. But our daughter comes from a particular world. A world with expectations, responsibilities, financial complexities. I understand, Ethan said, though he was starting to understand more than Richard knew. Do you? Victoria set down her fork. Because love is lovely, Ethan. But it doesn't pay mortgages. It doesn't maintain the lifestyle Lila is accustomed to. It doesn't protect assets that have been in our family for generations. What my wife is trying to say, Richard interjected, is that we'd like to discuss a prenuptial agreement. The room went silent. Lila's hand tightened on Ethan's. Dad, we talked about this. We did, Richard said firmly. And we agreed it was necessary. Ethan looked at Lila. Her eyes were apologetic, but she wasn't disagreeing. She'd known. She'd known this was coming. Of course, Ethan heard himself say. Whatever makes sense. Victoria's smile sharpened. Wonderful. We'll have our attorneys draw something up. 2 weeks later, Ethan sat in a conference room that smelled like leather and old money. Lila beside him, her parents across the table, and between them a lawyer who looked like he billed by the breath. This is standard, the lawyer said, sliding the document across polished mahogany. Simply protecting both parties in the event of dissolution. Ethan opened it. 50 pages. Article 1. Separate property. Any and all property owned by Lila Ashford prior to marriage shall remain her sole and separate property. Article 4. No claim to marital residence. Ethan Marlow shall have no ownership interest in any property purchased during the marriage. Article 7. Child custody provisions. In the event of dissolution, primary custody of any children born during the marriage shall default to Lila Ashford unless Ethan's hands went cold. They were taking custody of children who didn't even exist yet. This seems. Ethan looked up. This seems pretty one-sided. It protects Lila, Victoria said simply. Surely you understand. What it does, Ethan said carefully, is assume I'm here for money, that I'd take advantage of her. We're not assuming anything, Richard said. We're being prudent. About me. Because I'm a teacher. Because I don't come from money. The silence was answer enough. Lila spoke finally, her voice small. Ethan, it's just a formality. It doesn't mean anything. We're not going to get divorced. Then why does it read like you're planning for it? Because that's what responsible people do, Victoria said, each word crisp. They plan. They protect what matters. What matters. Not who matters. What? Ethan looked at the prenup again. At the clauses that stripped him of dignity, of partnership, of any claim to a life they'd supposedly built together. He thought about walking away. About standing up and telling them exactly what they could do with their prenup and their assumptions and their barely concealed contempt. But then he looked at Lila. Her eyes were wet, pleading. She loved him. He believed that. But she was also her parents' daughter. Raised in this world of protection and suspicion. Taught that love needed insurance. And Ethan loved her too much to make her choose. Even if that love cost him everything. Where do I sign? He asked quietly. Victoria's face showed the smallest flicker of surprise. Like she'd expected him to fight. Like she was almost disappointed he didn't. The lawyer flipped to the signature pages. Pointed. Ethan picked up the pen. Felt heavy. Like it weighed more than it should. He signed page 22. Page 35. Page 48. Each signature felt like giving away a piece of himself. When it was done, Richard nodded. "Thank you for being reasonable." Ethan said nothing. What could he say? That they just made him feel smaller than he'd ever felt in his life? That loving their daughter had just cost him his self-respect? That 6 months from now, when his inheritance unlocked, they'd realize they judged him by all the wrong measures? He kept those thoughts locked away, because Ethan Marlow was a patient man. And patience, he was learning, was its own kind of power. They thought they'd protected themselves. They had no idea what they'd just set in motion. Nobody knew about the money. Not Lila. Not her parents. Not even Ethan Jr. The only people who'd known were Ethan and his Uncle Marcus. And Marcus had been dead for 3 years. Uncle Marcus, the eccentric one. The family member everyone whispered about at reunions. Never married. No kids. Made his fortune in tech back when the internet was still dial-up. Then disappeared to a cabin in Montana to live deliberately. Whatever that meant. Ethan had been the only one who visited. Every summer during college, he'd drive 12 hours to that cabin. They'd fish, play chess, talk about life and philosophy and whether happiness was something you found or something you built. "You're going to be a teacher?" Marcus had asked during one of those visits. "Yeah," Ethan said. "I know it's not. It's perfect," Marcus interrupted. "You know why? Because you're choosing meaning over money. Most people never figure that out." Marcus died a month before Sarah did. Heart attack. Quick. The lawyer said he went peacefully. The will reading happened during the worst grief of Ethan's life. He barely remembered it. Just sat there, numb, while the lawyer droned about assets and provisions. "And to my nephew, Ethan Marlow, I leave the entirety of my estate, valued at approximately $20 million, to be held in trust until his 36th birthday. Ethan had looked up. "What? Your uncle was quite specific," the lawyer said. "The inheritance unlocks on your 36th birthday, not before. He believed you needed time to, and I quote, become the man worthy of wealth, not the man corrupted by it. $20 million. It didn't feel real. Still didn't. Ethan had gone home to his dying wife and his young son and a future that was collapsing around him. The money felt like a distant dream, a problem for a different version of himself. And then Sarah died, and Ethan spent the next 3 years just trying to survive. He never told anyone. What was the point? The money wasn't his yet. Wouldn't be his for years. And besides, he didn't want to be loved for money he didn't have. He wanted to be loved for who he was. So when Lila's parents slid that prenup across the table, when they made it crystal clear they saw him as poor, powerless, a man who brought nothing to the marriage except need, Ethan signed it without a word. Because in 6 months he'd turn 36. In 6 months, $20 million would become his. And in 6 months, the Ashfords would realize they'd been protecting the wrong fortune all along. The irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was, living in Lila's penthouse, sleeping in her bed, eating meals her family probably paid for, all while sitting on a secret that made their wealth look modest. $20 million. He could have bought the penthouse, could have bought 10 penthouses, but he didn't say a word. He went to work every morning, taught chemistry to teenagers who didn't appreciate it, graded papers at the kitchen island while Lila planned charity galas. He picked up Ethan Jr. from school, helped with homework, read bedtime stories. He lived small, deliberately small, and he watched how Lila acted when she thought she held all the power, watched how her parents treated him when they believed he had nothing, watched what wealth did to people, how it made them feel entitled, superior, justified in their cruelty. Uncle Marcus had been right. Wealth revealed character. It didn't build it. And what Ethan was seeing, it was starting to make him wonder if he'd made a terrible mistake. Started small. "I booked us for Aspen over Christmas," Lila announced one evening. Ethan looked up from helping Ethan Jr. with fractions. Aspen. The family has a place there. It's tradition. I was thinking we could do something smaller this year. Maybe just the three of us. Ethan Jr.'s never seen a real Christmas market, and there's one in. Ethan. Lila's voice was patient. Too patient. It's already booked. My parents are expecting us. Right? Ethan said. Of course. Ethan Jr. looked between them, picking up on the tension. Can I bring my new dinosaur book? Of course you can, sweetie, Lila said, ruffling his hair. The conversation was over. Decided. Without Ethan's input, it would become a pattern. I enrolled Ethan Jr. in Dalton for next fall, Lila said a month later. Ethan froze. You what? Dalton. It's one of the best private schools in Manhattan. The waiting list is insane, but my father called in a favor. Lila, we talked about this. His current school is fine. He's happy there. He'll be happier at Dalton. Better education. Better opportunities. Better wealthy kids to impress? The words came out sharper than Ethan intended. Lila's face hardened. That's not fair. Neither is making decisions about my son without consulting me. Our son, Lila corrected. I thought we were building a family here, Ethan. That means I get a say too. And there it was. The subtle shift. Our son. Like marriage gave her equal claim to the child Ethan had raised alone for years. You're right, Ethan said quietly.
I'm sorry.
But he wasn't. Not really. He was just learning to pick his battles. The dinner parties were the worst. Lila's parents hosted them monthly. 30 people. Wealth and influence packed into one room. Senators. CEOs. People who ran the world from mahogany desks. And Ethan, the chemistry teacher. What do you do? Someone would inevitably ask. I teach. Chemistry. High school. Oh. Always the same response. Oh. Like they'd just been told he cleaned toilets. That's nice. Then they'd turn to someone else. Someone more interesting. Someone whose job title didn't embarrass them. Ethan would stand there with his drink, smile fixed, dying inside. Lila never noticed. Or if she did, she never said anything. She was too busy being brilliant, charming donors, discussing fundraisers, moving through her world like she owned it, which, in a sense, she did. You were quiet tonight, Lila said after one particularly brutal dinner. Was I? You barely talked to anyone. Nobody wanted to talk to me, Lila. That's not true. Isn't it? Ethan set down his glass. Your world isn't interested in chemistry teachers. They're interested in hedge fund managers and art collectors and people who summer in St. Tropez. I don't fit here. You fit with me, Lila said softly. Did he, though? More and more, Ethan was starting to wonder. The final straw came 3 months before his birthday. Ethan Jr. was having trouble in school. Not academic trouble, social trouble. The kids at his new private school were different. Meaner. They mocked his backpack, his lunch, the fact that his dad was just a teacher. I don't want to go back, Ethan Jr. said one night, tears streaming. They're mean, Dad. They say we're poor. Ethan's heart broke. You're not going back, he said, pulling his son close. We'll figure something else out. Like what? Lila asked later. He needs to adjust. It's hard at first, but he'll make friends. He's miserable, Lila. He's 7. 7-year-olds are dramatic. He's my son and he's hurting. And I'm trying to give him the best education possible. You're trying to turn him into someone he's not, Ethan said. Just like you're trying to turn me into someone I'm not. Lila stared at him. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm tired of being invisible in my own life. I'm tired of decisions being made without me. I'm tired of being treated like I'm lucky you're letting me be here. I never said that. You didn't have to. They stared at each other across the kitchen island. The distance between them suddenly felt like miles. I love you, Lila said finally. But you're being unfair. Am I? Or am I just finally being honest? She didn't answer. That night, Ethan lay awake staring at the ceiling. In 8 weeks, he'd turn 36. In 8 weeks, everything would change. The question was, what would he do with that change? Would he stay? Prove to Lila that wealth didn't matter? That he'd loved her when he had nothing and would still love her when he had everything? Or would he leave? Walk away from a woman who'd never really seen him? Who'd loved the idea of him but not the reality? He didn't know yet, but he was starting to realize that money wasn't the only thing his uncle's inheritance would give him. It would give him something far more valuable. A choice, because for the first time in months, Ethan Marlow wouldn't be powerless. He'd be free, and freedom, he was learning, changes everything. The morning of Ethan's 36th birthday started quietly. Too quietly. He woke before dawn, Lila still asleep beside him. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan was just beginning to glow, that soft pre-sunrise light that made even the city look gentle. Today was the day. His phone buzzed. A calendar notification. Trust fund unlocks today. Contact Whitmore and Associates by 9 a.m. $20 million. Ethan stared at the notification until the screen went dark. Then he got up, made coffee, and tried to figure out who he was about to become. Happy birthday, Dad. Ethan Jr. launched himself into the kitchen, still in pajamas, holding a card made from construction paper and covered in crayon drawings of dinosaurs. Did you make this? Ethan asked, his throat tight. Lila helped with the spelling. His son admitted. But I did all the drawing. See? That's you. And that's me. And that's a T-Rex because they're cool. It's perfect, buddy. Ethan pulled his son into a hug, breathing in the smell of sleep and childhood and everything that mattered. Best birthday present ever. Better than the one from Lila? Ethan looked up. Lila stood in the doorway holding a small wrapped box. Nothing beats dinosaurs, Ethan said carefully. Lila smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Things had been strained since their fight about Ethan Jr.'s school. Polite, careful, like they were roommates instead of partners. Open it later, she said, setting the box on the counter. I have a breakfast meeting. Will you be home for dinner? My parents want to take us out. Of course they did. Sure, Ethan said. She kissed his forehead. Quick, distracted, and left. Ethan Jr. looked up at him. Are you and Lila fighting? No, Buddy. We're fine. But they weren't. And after today, Ethan had no idea if they ever would be again. Whitmore and Associates occupied the 42nd floor of a building that probably cost more than most people made in a lifetime. Ethan signed in at the desk, gave his name, and waited. His hands were sweating. Mr. Marlow? A young woman in a sharp suit appeared. Mr. Whitmore is ready for you. The office was all dark wood and leather. Diplomas on the wall. Photos of Mr. Whitmore shaking hands with people who ran countries. Ethan. Whitmore stood, extending his hand. He was 60, silver-haired, with the kind of face that had seen every possible human drama. Happy birthday. Thank you. Your uncle was very specific about today. Whitmore opened a file. The trust dissolves at 9 a.m. All assets transfer to your name immediately. I have the paperwork ready. Ethan's heart hammered. How much exactly? 20,347,000 and change. The investments performed well. Whitmore slid documents across his desk. Sign here, initial here, and here. Ethan picked up the pen. This was it. The moment that changed everything. He signed. Once, twice, 3 times. Congratulations, Whitmore said. You're a wealthy man, Ethan. Your uncle believed you'd know what to do with this. He believed you'd earned it by being the kind of man who didn't need it. Ethan stared at the papers, at his signature, at proof that his entire life had just shifted on its axis. What happens now? He asked. Now? Whitmore smiled. Now you decide what kind of wealthy man you want to be. Ethan walked out of that building into bright October sunshine. The city looked different. Or maybe he looked at it differently. Every building, every car, every person rushing past, he could buy almost anything. Could walk into stores he'd only ever window shopped. Could erase debt, erase worry, erase the constant mental math of survival. But mostly he thought about Lila, and her parents, and that prenup sitting in a safe somewhere, worthless now. Irrelevant. They'd tried to protect their daughter from a poor man. They'd locked the wrong vault. His phone rang. Lila. Hey, he answered. Hey, listen, change of plans for tonight. My parents want to do dinner at their place instead. Apparently my mother has some big announcement. Can you be there by 7? Sure. Great. Love you. She hung up before he could say it back. Ethan stood on the sidewalk, phone in hand, and made a decision. Tonight. He'd tell them tonight. Not because he wanted to see their faces when they realized, though part of him, the part that was tired of being invisible, absolutely wanted that. But because he needed to know. Needed to know if Lila would look at him differently. If her love would change when the money appeared. If her parents would suddenly find him acceptable. He needed to know what he was really dealing with. Because $20 million didn't just buy freedom. It bought truth. The dinner table was set for 5. Ethan arrived exactly at 7, Ethan Jr. in tow. His son was unusually quiet, picking up on something Ethan couldn't quite name. That animal instinct children have when adults are about to change the world. Ethan, there you are. Richard Ashford appeared, drink in hand, smile sharp. Happy birthday. Thank you. 36. Good age. Old enough to have wisdom, young enough to use it. Richard's eyes flicked over Ethan's off-the-rack suit. Come. Victoria's been cooking, well, supervising the cooking. You know how she is. Lila met them in the dining room. She looked beautiful, also nervous. What's going on? Ethan asked quietly. I'll explain at dinner. They sat. Victoria appeared with the chef's latest creation. Something French and complicated. Small talk. Weather. Politics. Ethan Jr. school. Nobody asked if he was happy there. Just whether his grades were good. Finally, Richard cleared his throat. So, we have news. Lila reached for Ethan's hand under the table. Her palm was sweating. We've been discussing the future, Victoria said. Specifically, Lila's future. And yours, Ethan. Here it comes, Ethan thought. We'd like to purchase a home for you both, Richard continued. Something appropriate. We found a lovely place in Connecticut. For bedrooms, good schools for the boy, close enough to the city for Lila's work. Ethan blinked. You want to buy us a house. Consider it a gift, Victoria said. We want you to be comfortable. However, Richard added, and there was that word again, that qualifier that meant everything. Given the financial realities of your situation, we'd maintain ownership. For tax purposes. For protection. You'd live there, of course, but legally. It would be ours, Victoria finished smoothly. We'd simply be providing it. No different than this arrangement. She gestured around the penthouse. Ethan felt something cold settle in his chest. They were offering him a house. Offering to improve his cage. Make it bigger, prettier, more comfortable. But still a cage. What do you think? Lila asked, squeezing his hand. She looked hopeful. Like this solved everything. Ethan looked at her parents, at the table spread with food he hadn't chosen, in a home he didn't own, discussing a future that had been decided without him. He thought about the documents in his briefcase, the bank statements, the proof that he didn't need their house, their money, their carefully controlled generosity. I think, Ethan said slowly, we need to talk. We are talking, Richard said. No. I mean really talk. Ethan reached down, pulled his briefcase onto his lap. opened it. "Ethan, what are you doing?" Lila's voice had gone uncertain. He pulled out the folder Whitmore had given him. Set it on the table between the wine glasses and the china. "This morning," Ethan said, "I turned 36. "Yes, happy birthday," Victoria said impatiently. "What does that have to?" "This morning, I inherited $20 million. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Richard's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Victoria's face went blank. Lila just stared. "What?" she whispered. "My Uncle Marcus. He died 3 years ago. Left everything to me in a trust that unlocked today." Ethan opened the folder, slid the bank statements across the table. $20,347,000. Give or take. Richard reached for the documents with shaking hands. Scanned them. His face went pale. Then read. "This is..." He looked up. "This is real. Verified this morning. The money's already transferred to my accounts." Victoria grabbed the papers from her husband. Her eyes moved over the numbers. Once, twice, like she couldn't make them make sense. "You've had this the whole time?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I've known about it, but I couldn't access it until today." Uncle Marcus was specific. 36th birthday. "Why didn't you tell us?" Richard demanded. "Why would I?" Ethan met his eyes. "You made it very clear what you thought of me. Poor teacher. Someone who needed protection from. Someone who'd take advantage of your daughter if given the chance." "Ethan," Lila started. "That prenup," Ethan continued, voice steady. "The one I signed? The one that said I'd never have rights to anything, never have a say in anything, never be an equal partner? I signed it knowing that in 6 months, none of it would matter. You let us." Victoria couldn't finish. "I let you show me exactly who you were," Ethan said. "I let you treat me like I was worth nothing. And you know what I learned?" Nobody answered. "Money doesn't reveal character. How you treat people without money reveals character. And you all failed." The words hung in the air like smoke. Lila's face had gone white. "Ethan, I didn't know." "Does it matter?" He turned to her. "If I'd stayed poor forever, would you have eventually left? Would you have woken up one day and realized you married beneath you? Or would you have just slowly erased me until I was a guest in my own life?" "That's not fair," Lila whispered. "Isn't it? You enrolled my son in a school without asking, booked vacations without consulting me, made decisions about our future like I was an accessory." His voice cracked. "I loved you, Lila. I loved you enough to sign away every shred of dignity I had. But love isn't supposed to feel like disappearing." Tears spilled down Lila's cheeks. Victoria recovered first. "Well, this changes things, doesn't it?" Her voice had sharpened, turned calculating. "Obviously the prenup is ironclad," Ethan finished. "I checked. Legally binding. Which means, Victoria, that if Lila and I divorce, I walk away with exactly what it says I can." He smiled. It wasn't kind. "Everything." Richard stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "You planned this. You manipulated." "I signed your prenup," Ethan said calmly. "I moved into your daughter's apartment. I let you make me feel small. I didn't manipulate anything. I just waited." "For what?" Richard's voice shook with rage. "For today. For clarity." Ethan stood. "Ethan Jr., get your things. We're leaving." "Leaving?" Lila stood too, frantic. "Ethan, wait. I'll be staying at a hotel tonight. Tomorrow I'll find an apartment. You'll hear from my lawyer about the divorce." "Divorce?" Lila looked stricken. "You can't. We can fix this." "Can we?" Ethan asked quietly. "Tell me, Lila, right now, looking at those bank statements, do you love me more or less?" She opened her mouth, closed it, She couldn't answer. And that, more than anything else, told Ethan everything he needed to know. I'll send for the rest of our things tomorrow. He took Ethan Jr.'s hand. His son looked scared but trusting. Come on, buddy. Let's go home. But this is home, Ethan Jr. whispered. No, Ethan said gently, leading him toward the door. Home is wherever we decide it is. And we get to decide now. Just us. Behind them, chaos erupted. Victoria's voice. We can contest the prenup. Richard's. Call Anderson. Call him now. And Lila's. Broken. Ethan, please. But Ethan didn't stop. Didn't look back. He walked out of that penthouse with his son's hand in his, their footsteps echoing on marble one last time. The elevator doors closed. And for the first time in months, maybe years, Ethan Marlow could breathe. Freedom, he was learning, came with a price. But so did staying. And he'd finally realized which price he was willing to pay. The hotel suite was too quiet. Ethan Jr. sat on the edge of the massive bed, still in his dinner clothes, clutching his dinosaur book like a lifeline. Dad! His voice was small. Are we really not going back? Ethan knelt in front of his son, taking his small hands. Not to live there, no? Because of the money? No, Budi. Because sometimes people don't treat us the way we deserve. And when that happens, we have to be brave enough to walk away. Even if we love them? God, his son was too smart, too perceptive. Especially then, Ethan said quietly. Sometimes loving someone means knowing when to let go. Ethan Jr. thought about this, his face serious in that way 7-year-olds get when they're trying to understand adult problems. Is Lila bad? No. She's not bad. She's just lost. And I can't help her find herself while I'm losing myself. His son nodded like he understood, even though Ethan knew he couldn't possibly. Not yet. Can we get ice cream? Ethan Jr. asked finally. Ethan laughed. Actually laughed. For the first time all day. Yeah, buddy. We can get ice cream. They ordered room service. 2 hot fudge sundaes at 10 p.m. on a Thursday. The kind of parenting choice Ethan never would have made before. But before was over. This was after. And in the after, ice cream for dinner was perfectly acceptable. The phone started ringing at midnight. Lila. 15 times in a row. Then texts. Please talk to me. I know I messed up. This isn't how I wanted things to be. I love you. Please. Ethan stared at the messages until they blurred. Part of him. The part that still remembered how she laughed. How she'd bandaged Ethan Jr.'s knee with a dinosaur band-aid. How she'd looked at him like he mattered. Wanted to call back. But the other part, the part that had watched himself disappear for months, knew better. Love wasn't enough. It never had been. He turned off his phone and tried to sleep. Morning brought clarity. And a visitor. Mr. Marlow? The hotel concierge called his room. There's a Mrs. Victoria Ashford here to see you. Ethan's jaw tightened. Tell her I'm not available. She says it's urgent. She's quite insistent, sir. Of course she was. Fine. I'll be down in 10 minutes. He left Ethan Jr. with cartoons and room service pancakes, then took the elevator down to face the dragon. Victoria sat in the lobby like she owned it. Probably did, knowing her family. She stood when she saw him, her face carefully composed. Ethan. Victoria. May we speak privately? He gestured to a seating area in the corner. Sat across from her, arms crossed. She studied him for a long moment. You played us. No. You played yourselves. I just didn't correct your assumptions. You lied by omission. Like you lied when you said you wanted to get to know me better? When you really just wanted to measure my worth. Ethan leaned forward. I was honest about everything that mattered. I loved your daughter. I was good to her. I treated her with respect. The only thing I didn't mention was money I couldn't access anyway. Victoria's jaw tightened. You made fools of us. You made a fool of me first. Difference is, I didn't deserve it. Silence stretched between them like a chasm. Why didn't you tell Lila? Victoria asked finally, and for the first time she sounded genuinely curious. She would have understood. She loved you. Did she? Or did she love the version of me that fit into her life? The one who didn't ask questions or make demands? Ethan shook his head. I needed to see who she was when she thought she had all the power. Turns out, she's her mother's daughter. The insult landed.
Victoria flinched.
She's devastated, Victoria said quietly. She hasn't stopped crying since you left. Good. Good. Victoria's eyes flashed. Yes, good. Maybe devastation will teach her something. Maybe it'll teach all of you that people aren't commodities. That worth isn't measured in bank accounts. Ethan stood. Was there anything else? Victoria remained seated, looking suddenly older, smaller. What will you do now? Whatever I want. That's the point of freedom, Victoria. I get to choose. And Lila? Ethan paused, thought about the woman he'd loved, the woman who'd made him believe in second chances, then slowly taken them all away. That's up to her, he said finally. If she wants to talk, really talk, not just apologize, I'll listen. But I'm done being invisible. Done apologizing for existing. If she can't see me for who I actually am, money or no money, then we never had a future anyway. He walked away before Victoria could respond. Behind him, he heard her say, so quietly he almost missed it, "You're right. About all of it." Ethan didn't turn around. Some apologies came too late. 3 weeks later, Ethan signed a lease on a brownstone in Brooklyn. Not a penthouse. Not some monument to wealth. Just a home. 3 bedrooms. A backyard where Ethan Jr. could play. A kitchen with morning light. Cost a fraction of what he could afford. But it was theirs. Dad, is this really ours? Ethan Jr. ran through the empty rooms, his voice echoing. Like, no one can take it away? No one can take it away, Ethan confirmed. His son's smile was worth every penny of the inheritance. They furnished it slowly, deliberately. No interior designers. No one else's vision. Ethan picked out a couch because it was comfortable, not because it matched some aesthetic. Bought dishes from Target. Hung pictures that meant something rather than cost something. For the first time in his life, he had money. And for the first time in months, he felt rich. Lila called on a Tuesday. Ethan almost didn't answer. But something, maybe curiosity, maybe the memory of who they'd been before everything broke, made him pick up. Hello, E. Her voice was rough, like she'd been crying. Can we talk? In person. Ethan looked around his new home, at the life he was building without her. Why? Because I owe you an apology. A real one. And because... She took a shaky breath. Because I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I think I finally understand what I lost. What you lost, Ethan repeated. Not what you did wrong. What you lost. Silence. You're right, Lila said quietly. What I did wrong. Everything I did wrong. Please, Ethan. One conversation. That's all I'm asking. He shouldn't. Every logical part of him knew this was a terrible idea. But the part that remembered her laugh. Coffee, he said. The diner in Queens where we had our first date. Tomorrow at 2. I'll be there. She hung up. Ethan stared at his phone, wondering if he'd just made his second biggest mistake. Or if maybe, possibly, people could actually change. She arrived early. Ethan saw her through the window as he approached. Sitting in the same booth they'd sat in 2 years ago. Nervous hands wrapped around a coffee mug. She looked different. Smaller somehow. Less polished. More real. He pushed through the door. She looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed. Hi, she said. E. He slid into the booth across from her. The waitress, the same one from that first date, poured him coffee without asking. winked at him like she remembered. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "Thank you for coming," Lila said finally. "You said you wanted to apologize."
Ido.
"I am." She took a breath.
I'm sorry, Ethan.
"For all of it. For the prenup. For making decisions without you. For letting my parents treat you like you weren't enough. For treating you like you weren't enough." Ethan sipped his coffee. Waited. "I told myself I was protecting us," Lila continued. "Protecting our future. But really I was just scared. Scared of what loving someone like you meant. Someone like me. Someone real. Someone who didn't fit into my world perfectly. Someone who challenged me to think about what I actually valued." Tears spilled over. "You were the first person who ever loved me for me, not for my name or my money. And I couldn't handle it. So I tried to make you fit. Tried to control everything because that's what I was taught to do." "Lila, I'm not done." She wiped her eyes. "I don't deserve forgiveness. I know that. I made you feel invisible when you were the only person actually seeing me. I chose my parents' approval over your dignity. I let you sign that prenup when I should have torn it up and told them to go to hell." Ethan felt something in his chest crack. Not break. Crack. Like maybe underneath something could still breathe. "Why didn't you?" he asked quietly. "Because I was weak. Because I'd never stood up to them before. And I didn't know how to start." Lila's voice broke. "Because I'm my mother's daughter, just like you said. And I hate that. I hate that I became exactly what I never wanted to be." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw it. The shame. The regret. The genuine understanding of what she'd done. "I enrolled in therapy," she said. "I moved out of the penthouse. I'm not taking money from my parents anymore. I got a real job at a nonprofit fundraising. Pays nothing compared to what I'm used to, but it's mine. It's honest." Ethan raised his eyebrows. "You're working. Shocking, right?" She laughed bitterly. "Turns out when you strip away the money and the name, you have to figure out who you actually are. I'm still working on that part." "And your parents?" "Horrified. Disappointed. Cut me off financially." Lila shrugged. "Turns out losing their approval feels better than I thought it would. Hurts less than losing you, anyway." The words sat between them. Ethan thought about everything. The prenup. The invisible months. The way she'd let her parents define his worth. The way she'd slowly erased him from his own life. But he also thought about the band-aids. The genuine laughter. The way she'd listened to Ethan Jr. talk about dinosaurs like it mattered. People were complicated. Love was complicated. And maybe, just maybe, second chances were for people who actually learned from their mistakes. "I can't go back to how things were," Ethan said finally. Lila nodded. "I know. If we tried again, and I'm not saying we should, it would have to be completely different. Equal partnership. No more decisions without both of us. No more letting anyone treat me like I'm less than. I understand. And Ethan Jr. comes first. Always. His happiness, his needs, his voice in his own life." "Absolutely." Ethan studied her, looking for lies, for performance, for the woman who'd smiled at dinner parties while he disappeared beside her. But all he saw was Lila. Raw, broken, real. "I'm not promising anything," he said. "I'm not asking for promises." Lila's voice was steady. "I'm asking for a chance to show you I can be better. That I am better. Even if that chance ends with us just being friends. Even if you never forgive me. I don't know if I can trust you again. Then let me earn it back." She reached across the table, not grabbing, just offering. "However long it takes. Whatever it takes. Let me prove that the woman you fell in love with is still here. That she just got lost for a while." Ethan looked at her hand. At the woman who'd broken his heart and was now asking to piece it back together. This was a terrible idea. But then again, so was swiping right on a woman who seemed too good to be true. So was falling in love as a widowed single father who'd sworn off relationships. So was signing a prenup that stripped him of everything while sitting on millions. Maybe terrible ideas were his specialty. Coffee, he said finally. Once a week. We talk. No expectations beyond that. Lila's face transformed. Not quite hope, but close. Coffee once a week, she repeated. I can do that. And therapy. For both of us. Together and separate. Done. And if at any point I feel like I'm disappearing again, you walk away, Lila finished. No guilt. No questions. You walk away and I let you go. Ethan nodded. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe it was the beginning of something. Or maybe it was closure. Either way, he'd know soon enough. 6 months later. Ethan stood in his backyard watching Ethan Jr. play with the dog they'd adopted last month. A rescue mutt named Bones. Because of course his dinosaur-obsessed son wanted a dog named after fossils. Dad, watch this. Ethan Jr. threw a ball. Bones fetched it enthusiastically, crashing into the fence in his excitement. Ethan laughed. Real laughter. The kind that came from the gut, from joy, from a life that finally felt like his own. Impressive, a voice said behind him. He turned. Lila stood at the gate, holding 2 coffees from their diner. 6 months of weekly meetings. 6 months of therapy and hard conversations and slowly, carefully learning to trust again. 6 months of Lila showing up, not as the woman who tried to remake him, but as someone genuinely trying to understand who she'd become and who she wanted to be. It wasn't perfect. Some weeks were harder than others. Some conversations ended in tears. Some wounds took longer to heal than either of them expected. But she kept showing up, kept doing the work, kept proving that people could change if they actually wanted to. I brought your usual, Lila said, handing him a coffee. And a puppuccino for Bones? You're going to spoil him. Someone has to. She smiled. Not the polished smile from dinner parties. The real one. The one that crinkled her eyes. Ethan Jr. spotted her. Lila, come meet Bones properly. He learned a new trick. Did he? Lila set down her coffee and let Ethan Jr. drag her toward the dog, who immediately jumped on her, tail wagging frantically. She laughed, getting dirt on her jeans. Actual jeans from a normal store, not designer anything, and scratched behind Bones's ears. What's the new trick? She asked. Watch. Ethan Jr. held up his hand. Bones, high five. The dog stared at him blankly, then licked his face. He's still learning, Ethan Jr. admitted. He's perfect, Lila said. Just needs practice. She looked up, caught Ethan watching them, and smiled. Something in his chest loosened. Not healed, not completely, but healing. Later, after Ethan Jr. was in bed and Bones was snoring on the couch, Ethan and Lila sat on the back porch with wine. Cheap wine from the corner store, because expensive wine had stopped matching months ago. Can I ask you something? Lila said. Sure. When you signed that prenup, did you hate me? Ethan considered this. No. I hated the situation. Hated feeling powerless. But you, he shook his head. I just felt sad. Sad that the woman I loved was letting other people define our worth. Do you still love me? Her voice was small, vulnerable. He could lie, keep his walls up, protect himself from the possibility of getting hurt again. But Ethan had spent too much time being invisible. Time to be honest. I never stopped, he said quietly. I tried to. God knows I tried. But some things don't go away just because you want them to. Lila's breath caught. Really? Really? Doesn't mean I'm not still scared. Doesn't mean trust comes easy. But yeah, I love you. The real you. The one who's been showing up every week with coffee and patience and actual effort. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I love you too. I never stopped either. Even when I was acting like I didn't see you, some part of me always did. I just didn't know how to. She gestured helplessly. How to be worthy of it. You're learning, Ethan said. We're both learning. He reached over, wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. Can I kiss you? She whispered. He should say no, should take more time, should protect his heart better. But he was tired of being afraid. Yeah, he said. You can kiss me. She did. Soft, careful, like she was afraid he might break. Or she might. It wasn't like before. Before was passion without foundation. This was something different, harder earned, more real. When they pulled apart, Lila pressed her forehead to his. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making this up to you, she said. I don't want you to make it up to me, Ethan replied. I just want you to be my partner, my equal, my person. I can do that. Then that's all I need. They sat there as night fell over Brooklyn. Two people who'd broken each other learning how to be whole again. It wouldn't be easy. Some bridges, once burned, took years to rebuild. But they had time. They had honesty. They had the kind of love that survived the worst and came out stronger. And sometimes that was enough. 1 year later, Ethan stood in a different lawyer's office. Not Whitmore's fancy suite. A small practice in Brooklyn. Affordable. Honest. You're sure about this? The lawyer asked, reviewing the documents. I'm sure, Ethan said. Lila sat beside him, holding his hand. We're sure. The new prenup was simple. Fair. Everything they owned would be split equally. All decisions made together. Equal partnership in every possible way. This is highly unusual, the lawyer said. Most people with your assets would want more protection. Most people, Ethan said, haven't learned what we learned. He signed. Lila signed. This time, the pen didn't feel heavy. Felt right. Outside, rain was starting to fall. They stood under the awning, watching the city wash itself clean. No regrets? Lila asked. Ethan thought about everything. The pain, the growth, the hard conversations and harder truths. The way they'd both had to become different people to deserve each other. No regrets, he said. She leaned into him. He wrapped his arm around her. And for the first time in a long time, the future didn't look uncertain. It looked like possibility, like partnership, like love that had been tested and survived. Ready to go home? Lila asked. Yeah, Ethan said. Let's go home. They walked into the rain together, equal at last. Some stories don't end with perfect happiness. They end with hard-won understanding, with growth, with people who chose each other not because it was easy, but because it was worth it. Ethan Marlow learned that wealth wasn't measured in dollars. It was measured in dignity, in respect, in being seen for who you truly were. And Lila Ashford learned that love without equality wasn't love at all. It was possession, and possession, no matter how gilded, would always feel like a cage. Together, they learned what it meant to rebuild. Not the relationship they'd had, but the one they deserved, the one they'd both become worthy of. If you've been with us through this whole journey, if Ethan's story spoke to you, if you've ever felt invisible, if you believe real love is built on respect and partnership, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment telling us what this story meant to you. Share it with someone who needs to remember their worth. Hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel because we bring you stories that matter. Stories about real people facing real challenges and finding real strength. Because at the end of the day, we all deserve to be seen. We all deserve to be valued. And we all deserve love that lifts us up rather than makes us disappear. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this community. Until next time, remember your worth. And never let anyone make you forget it.